My good buddy Sean, you've been in this game with me for basically since a new era of my life. You've been a big part of this. I'm doing a monologue to start this, and then I'll let you introduce yourself. But I moved from a place where my identity was, and you DM me in the midst of my move, which sounds really creepy. That sounds like something it wasn't. It was about like there should be like the darker side of boxing should be a documentary, and you reached out and we created a friendship, and that was about probably 5 years ago. So Sean, we're back. We still talk to each other. You're an important person in my life forever. Tell people what you got going on before we talk a little British boxing.
Thanks for having me back on. Really appreciate coming on. It's been like 12 months, isn't it, since we actually did something. You kind of came on my show, the BTR Boxing Podcast Network shows, because I have had so much trouble with being able to secure somebody to support me on the show since Johnston left a couple of years ago, and I've kind of been flying solo and having the odd guest on from time to time. Still doing bits here and there. Working on a new Dark Side of Boxing season 4. I've got the my guy Hassan, who does the script writing for all the shows. He's working on season 4 for us right now. Um, I think the biggest significant thing I did in the last 6 months was probably the Mike Tyson career profile. So we did a retelling of Mike Tyson's life. It was 9 parts, which I really didn't anticipate was going to be 9 parts. So you're looking at an hour and a half per part. So, you do the maths. I'm no good at maths. You do the maths. It's what, like 11, 12 hours worth of me telling the story of Mike Tyson's life from start up until where we are now. And that seems to have gone down really well with the listeners and the viewers across YouTube. So, really, really happy with that because, these stories get told time and time again. And, it's about your interpretation of it and how you deliver it. So yeah, it's been good fun. And now I'm starting up something different in a different world as well as doing this. I'm starting up a wrestling podcast as well in a different world, so it's all good fun. But it's good to be back on. It's been crazy. We haven't seen each other or really had a lot of conversing over boxing for a while, have we?
No, it's been about a year, but it's okay. It's okay. I think we'll live. Um, highly requested were your thoughts on Chisora Wilder, and one reason why is multiple people remember you called Chisora beating Otto Wallin, whereas I thought Wallin would. So they want you to give a perspective to this fight because I think a lot of people in my hardcore community view you as the voice of British boxing to a certain extent. They view you as like the I think British fight fans romanticize the everyman, and I think you're the everyman journalist that speaks up for a certain contingency of British fans. So I think they want you to come on and go through some British fights with me.
Listen, I just tried to be as objective as possible. I've got no agenda. I've got no narrative. I don't work for anybody specifically. I'm not trying to promote a certain brand within the UK or a certain promoter. I'm just saying it as I see it, and from my experiences of being involved in this side of the sport, but then also being a fan for 30 plus years. I'm just kind of saying it as I see it. So, Wilder versus Chisora. Where do we start with this, Lukie? Is it a fight you guys in America have warmed to at all? Or is it one you're not really bothered about?
I like it. You're doing my thing when I'm a guest. You're throwing it back to the host. I love this. This is why we vibe out. I'm zero interest. My gut feeling is that this is Chisora getting a big win over an American fighter, and that's why it's happening in Britain. But I feel like this version of Wilder is not the same guy. I don't think we've seen the same Wilder really since the second Fury fight. I think it's been a gradual decline. And Chisora, I don't really feel comfortable watching him fight because he's had a lot of physical fights, and I'm without being a softie, I feel uncomfortable with him fighting because it feels like we're getting to a point where something like he's he's just taken too much punishment. So those are my initial thoughts.
I'll piggyback on a lot of what you've said. Wilder's not the same fighter anymore. 100%. Fury has taken a piece of Wilder. I also think Wilder's taken a piece of Fury, but that's another story. For Chisora, however, I echo your sentiments, but I also feel he's still got enough left in the tank as a fighter to beat Deontay Wilder. If you would have put this fight to me in 2017, 2018, everybody would have said Wilder. Nobody would have given Derek Chisora a shot at winning this fight. Now we're in 2026, 7-8 years down the line. Both are at the end of their careers. Apparently, this is Chisora's. He's definitely his last fight. Otto Volim for me was supposed to be his last fight, and then he come back again. This is supposed to be his 50th and final fight, and I really hope it is. Now I'm just going to go off on a little tangent for a second, but I'll come back to why I'm going off on a tangent. So, obviously, since we last spoke, we lost Ricky Hatton. We never really had a conversation about his loss, and most recently there was an inquest into his death, and they basically said that he had CTE, which could have been part of his decision-making process to end his own life, possibly. At the age of 46, 47, he had CTE from all them blows over the years. Derek Chisora is a fighter that I've said for probably 2 to 3 years. He scares me with the amount of punishment that he takes, and I wanted to see him go away from this sport a couple of years ago. It's a really tough one because boxers financially, they only have a short career span, as we know, and they want to try and earn as much money as possible, and I believe this fight's probably going to be getting a good paycheck for both of them. But, and here's the but, do we then see Derek Chisora in a few years' time, going through the same battles that Ricky Hatton went through? I really hope not.
So my question to you is, feels like this is more of a British fight for British fight fans than it is for a US fan. Who really is this fight for? Is this for like the middle 30 to 40-year-old man that remembers both of these fighters? And it's like I always call these like NES Classic games. Like when the NES Classic came out, it was such a big deal for me because now I've got a little more money. I can play a game I remembered when I was 7. It's the game sort of, but it's more about me reminding myself of a time that doesn't exist anymore. Is that the best way to understand this fight? Is the fans reliving a time that no longer exists?
I would agree. I also think it's the end of an era, and I think we are going through a dramatic transitional period in heavyweight boxing, particularly at the moment. And I live a lot in nostalgia. I sort of, as I've approached 40 years of age, I've become very nostalgic in this frame of my life. And, I think back to a time when life was totally different. And I think when you get, a heavyweight era that you've kind of consciously lived through and been of an age to really embrace that heavyweight era, this has been kind of it for me. This era of the likes of Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Derek Chisora, Dillian White, just to name but a few. I feel this is obviously more for the British fight fan. Derek Chisora is having this one last final stand. Who better than to get a fighter he never was able to face in the ring during their respective primes in Deontay Wilder? Yes, it's many years too late, but it definitely feels like because it's happening in the UK, to me that screams out that the money is being invested from our perspective, and it's to get Wilder here because of his name, not necessarily because of what he offers in the ring anymore. It's more so he's a name. He was once a formidable opponent in the ring. For Derek Chisora to go out on a high by beating someone like Deontay Wilder, to me and you, that probably won't mean anything, but to the average casual watcher of boxing who's followed Derek Chisora for his style and the fact that he brings action to the ring, for them it'll be an amazing way to end his career.
Would Chisora stop if he wins this fight?
I truly hope so. I truly hope so. I say a lot on my podcast that the heavyweight division is you're one punch away from becoming relevant again in the heavyweight division. That's the scary part about where we are with boxing at the moment is, look at Dave Allen, another British fighter who is absolutely not on world title contention level, but yet he's got this fight with Philippe Hrgovic, who was again once known as a formidable opponent in this division. You just seem to be one punch away or one fight away from being in contention for something, and it's not a good thing, because if Derek Chisora wins and he beats Deontay Wilder in emphatic fashion, he stops him, then all of a sudden people around him are going to be saying, just one more fight, Derek, just one more big fight, Derek. A Fabio Wardley maybe. Look at obviously Moses Itauma last night. there's a potential here, that Derek Chisora might throw his name in the hat for that. It's scary, really, because I want to see him done after this.
Yeah, I mean, I share your sentiments. How does this fight look?
Messy, sloppy, um, but in parts will probably be exciting. I always say about fights of this nature where it's 5 or 6 years way past its sell by date. Yes, it's not really what we want to see as the hardcore contingent. However, because both of their faculties have declined, their skills have declined as fighters, it probably makes for a more entertaining fight for the gladiatorial audience who want to see just two guys slug it out. I think that's what we're going to get here. Do you want me to fire away a prediction yet, or are we saving that?
No, because we're gonna run the gauntlet of there's a lot of British fights, and I want to just use and abuse you in terms of British boxing. So just fire a prediction. What do you think's happening?
At this moment in time, I'm not going to change my opinion, and this is definitely not patriotic bias, by the way, for the listeners. I just look at where both of these guys are in their careers. What have they done recently? What is relevant to them? And based on most recent history, I would fancy Chisora to stop Deontay Wilder in this fight. I don't think Deontay Wilder's punch resistance is there. I don't think he's got the legs he once had. That I think we've seen it, haven't we? We've seen Zhang do it. We've seen Joseph Parker do it. We've seen Fury lay that blueprint down for fighting Wilder. You bully this fighter, you put him against the ropes, you put him in the corner, you get on his chest. He does not like it. He does not have then the range to throw them once formidable shots. And that's the way to beat Deontay Wilder. Derek Chisora is a guy that likes to get on your chest. Derek Chisora is a guy that will push and bully you around and hug you and get messy with you. He's the perfect opponent for Derek Chisora to end his career with a fantastic win.
Okay. Let's look at this undercard. So there's a IBF cruiserweight eliminator fight. We got Vidal Riley, who I honestly thought was simply just a little bit above a YouTuber, and he's really proved that he's more than that. He's taken on Matsis Masternuk. I've done some film study for the vlog or for my blog. And then we got Denzel Bentley, who I'm gonna actually this is a Lukie my guy fight. Denzel Bentley, who I think is a British level fighter who has things that aren't being recreated with his fluidity. I think a lot of times, like who was the guy we saw? Thompson last night got knocked out. And it's like a lot of times British fighters have one trait. And what I think really impressed me about Denzel Bentley is he might not be like a world champion level fighter, give or take, but he has this fluidity that you don't always see amongst great fighters. And he looks like the part of a top 10 fighter to me, just based on his fluidity, ability to transition offense to defense, defense to offense. He takes on Saranza, who had a close fight with another fighter, Matteo Tapia, I believe was his name. And it's an interim IBF middleweight title fight. So the winner is that. Are either of these fights consequential? Are these fights moving the needle? What are your thoughts on these?
Denzel Bentley versus Zaveda. I think that's a great fight for Bentley because Bentley obviously has been in really competitive fights, both domestically and then stepping up to sort of European level. I think with the issues that Janibek has had in this division, I feel like it's kind of left the market wide open right now in the middleweight division, and it's looking for somebody to sort of grab that opportunity. Obviously, it's a WBO interim middleweight title fight, which sort of puts him potentially into mandatory position moving forward for a title fight. I honestly, I can't really say I've seen Zaveda too much, so it's really difficult for me to make an assessment on, what he's actually going to bring to the table. But I know Denzel really well, and I've watched Denzel's career for quite some time, and I feel like, Denzel is a fighter that on his day, can compete with the top guys in the middleweight division. Janibek was the only one I would have said stay away from, because I don't think he was ever going to be ready for Janibek. But I think with the middleweight division being wide open as it is at the moment, I think there's arguably a chance that, he may put himself into contention to fight for that WBO title, and picking up a win here is absolutely a must to kind of resurrect his career on that stage. Vidal Riley, yeah, I'm going to go back to him. You know, when he first started out his career, I was of the same opinion as you, Luke. You know, he's a guy that's transitioning from the YouTube world, and obviously, as we've seen, some take it very seriously, some take it not so seriously, and use their, you know, marketable appeal, so to say, to get themselves into great positions to earn a lot of money. But Vidal's actually taking this really seriously. He's facing Matthias Masternak, who's an absolute veteran of the sport. He will give Vidal Riley rounds, but he is a fighter that I think he's past his best, and I think this is a chance for Vidal Riley to be shown on the European / world stage. You know, this guy's taking it seriously. This guy is actually a guy who could potentially fight for a cruiserweight title in the future. But by winning the European title, it kind of solidifies him as serious for me. You know, not only is he fought at domestic level for British title level, he's fighting for a European title. Then the next way up from there is to the top, which is to the world level. He's got to win this fight, though. Masternak's a tough opponent. Masternak is a fighter that will be very durable for him. If I'm putting a prediction on that particular fight, I'd probably say it goes the distance in this one, because I think Masternak will be there and he'll be solid and he'll give him rounds and he'll give him puzzles to figure out. But I think he's past his best, so I do feel Riley will have youth on his side and speed on his side against him. So I'm expecting Riley to come through this. I don't expect him to knock him out. I expect him to go the distance with it, but it'll be a really serious win for his career. I think people can then genuinely stand up and say, do you know what? This guy's actually done that transition to fight a guy like Masternak and then go in and beat him, despite his age, despite him being past his best. It's a good resume builder for him if he wants to really, really be considered as a serious contender in this division.
How good is Pat Brown? He returns this week, I believe. What is the UK sentiment from a US fan who is not fully paying attention to every episode of the Pat Brown special? What is the sentiment from over there?
He's another fighter who's come from the amateur side of the sport, and he's been phenomenal. And because of how well he's done as an amateur, there's naturally always this expectation as a fight fan that this guy is going to be the next one to do it. Not everybody who comes and transitions over from that side of the sport, no matter how high they get, whether it's Olympic level and whether they win a medal at the Olympics, it doesn't necessarily always make a great deal of difference. And Luke Campbell would be a good recent example of that. Luke had absolutely all the tools to be a world champion and just wasn't good enough. He just wasn't good enough at the highest level to do that. Is Pat Brown good enough? I reserve judgment on it for now. For those that listen in the US, you know, I'm being totally honest with you. I like to reserve judgment. I don't want to really get put on that hype train just yet, because I feel he needs more time. Again, you know, he's transitioning from amateur to professional. He needs the right level of matching. He needs to be not kept building up a padded record for too long. He needs to be given natural progression throughout his career, because then we're going to see potentially the best of this guy. Could he be a world champion? He's got the tools, he's got the abilities, he's got the skills to do it. I think it's how they maneuver him now through the ranks and how well they match him, because that for me makes a massive difference as to how successful the fight is actually going to be.
Now I will ask you again. How good is he to you?
How good is he now, or how good can he be?
Like, what's your gut feeling? I trust your instincts when it comes to British boxers and when you watch things.
I honestly, I think he's got. I think he now at this moment, he's still, for me, is still a work in progress. He's very, very good, very good. I think he could beat a lot of British fighters right now that are seasoned professionals. But I've seen so many fighters like this come unstuck because they've not been given the right apprenticeship for their boxing careers. When I say in judgment, I wait to see whether they push. If they rush him too soon, it could destroy his career. If they nurture him properly, he could be a world champion. 100%. He's got the ability to do that. And that's kind of where I see him at this moment in time. I want to see him be progressed. I want to get excited about the prospect of him becoming a world champion as a fight fan from Britain. I want to see another guy come through the traditional route and be able to pick up the area titles in the UK, to pick up the English, to pick up the British title, to pick up the Europe. That's the traditional route coming from the UK in the British boxing to the world level. I want to see him do that because I think that just makes more of a legacy for him. At this moment in time, I reserve judgment on Lukie because I don't want to say it's going to be the best thing that Britain's ever seen and then.
Okay, and you're running for office soon. The next question I have for you is Lauren Price. Where should we view Lauren Price? She was one of the best in 2020 in terms of the Olympics. She has a fight coming up. I've seen the Puerto Rican fighter she's fought on these Puerto Rican cards I cover. That being said, it really feels like if it's not a big name fighter, she probably wins all those fights. I'm interested the excitement around her.
She's a very exciting fighter. I think she needs the right dance partner. I think until she gets the right dance partner, until she gets the right opponent facing off against her, it's incredibly difficult to then really ascertain how good again she is going to be. Yes, I know she's a world champion. I know she holds multiple belts. The problem we've got is that the depths of the divisions in that side of the sport, it's not fantastic. So within 2 or 3 fights, you can be put into a position really quickly to fight for a world title, but then not also have the level of opponent that needs to demonstrate how good you are, or give you that level of apprenticeship. There's plenty of fighters around the weight above and below which she could aim for. I mean, she's always talked about potentially fighting Katie Taylor, but that's not going to happen. Katie Taylor's looking at Croke Park as her final fight, and I expect her to retire shortly. But you've got Terri Harper and Caroline Dubois fighting very soon as well. And then obviously you've got the likes of Alicia Baumgardner, who that would be a fight eventually I'd like to see somewhere down the line. Price versus Baumgardner. Price, I think, has got the ability to be an unbelievable fighter. I mean, in her last fight, she beat a legendary female fighter from Britain in Natasha Jonas. I think if she could then also get other big wins. I mean, McCaskill's obviously a big win for her as well. I'm not going to dispute that Jessica McCaskill was a good win, but I think she needs more. To be considered the same way people consider Katie Taylor right now, as like a legendary female fighter, she needs a little bit more on her resume before we get to that point and start sort of labelling her a legendary female fighter from the UK.
To me, she has a lot of pizzazz. She looks the part of a legendary fighter. But man, as her career kind of slowed down, I think it probably is with Boxer. Boxer's not really had stability. They had Ben Whitaker, and they've been kind of all over the place. It feels like she just needs to be more active, to be perfectly honest. It feels like the talent is there, the story, the ability is there, but it feels like she disappears for long periods of time in a division where she really should be more active. Was that my internet?
Yeah, it froze.
Okay, so it just feels as though um she looks the part of a star, she acts the way of a star, she has the performances of a star, but yet she doesn't stay active enough. And I think that part of that is Boxer. Boxer hasn't been keeping their fighters as active as one might have hoped.
No, that obviously makes a difference as well. Personally, I think she needs to move on from Boxer. I don't think Boxer. I think at one point they seem to have a good little stable behind them, but I feel now that isn't the case anymore. I feel like Lauren Price she needs to be fighting on DAZN. She needs to be being pushed promotionally massively, and I think that's one of the things Boxer, with all due respect to them as an outfit, I don't think they do it well enough. And I think she needs to be put on the big stage, and she needs to be constantly pushed out there. I mean, that's the only way as a fighter you're gonna, in this age, you're gonna get yourself out there is being pushed, constantly pushed, not necessarily rammed down people's throats, but pushed. You know, Clarissa Shields does an absolutely great job of promoting herself. You know, she's getting involved in all sorts of different things, but she still maintains she's the greatest woman of all time. She still has that sort of aura around her. Lauren Price is that fighter where she knows she's got the ability to be that type of a fighter. She's just not being promoted very well. That's my opinion on it. And as harsh as it may seem, I feel like that's the reality with her at the moment.
Final two thoughts, and we're going to try to go in the speed round here. Caroline Dubois, Terri Harper. It happens, I believe, on Sunday in London. What's the excitement for this fight? Ellie Scoutney is one of my favorite women's boxers. I'm very excited about her. I think she's a pound for pound level talent. And then Chantel Cameron's featured on the card, and it really feels like after the Katie Taylor win, little Bernard Hopkins. Like we know you beat Bernard Hopkins, but your career kind of derails. It feels like Chantel Cameron beat Katie Taylor, but her career is self destructed. What are the storylines? What are the thoughts, and how important is this card for British boxing?
Yeah, I think it's important, Luke. I think it's an important card. I think, like we've just been talking about, obviously, the female side of boxing and the difficulties that the female fighters have with not really having a massive pool of talent to pick from to build your career up. You know, it feels very much like, and the best analogy I can think of is going. I feel like the depths of female boxing, there's no in between. You've got either your absolutely great fighters or you've got your sort of really basic level, sometimes mediocre fighters, and it makes it really difficult for competition for some of these ladies to actually really progress their careers. So when you get a card, obviously like this, when you've got the likes of Caroline versus Terry, which is a great fight in the lightweight division, and then you've got the likes of Ellie Scottney, who's really come into her own as a fighter. I've really enjoyed watching her progression. At the beginning, I was a bit unsure about where she was going, and I think again that's down to level of competition. But now I think I've seen her really come out in her own, and again to defend her titles on this card, it's significant. Chantel Cameron, yes, I'm on board with you, Lukie, with how you feel about that. I feel Chantel dethroned Katie Taylor. Like, that blemish is always going to be on Katie Taylor's record, and that'll always go down in history. Yes, Katie avenged that fight, but Chantel didn't do anything afterwards. She's not done anything significant enough for me that's really put her back into contention. I don't know what her situation is outside of the ring. I don't know if she's having any sort of issues managerial or whether it's the lack of promotion there. I mean, obviously, since she lost to Katie Taylor, she's had some good wins, but she hasn't had any more standout fights. And that's the problem. She needs a standout fight. She needs to be right back up there. You know, Katie Taylor's just constantly back to back with her fights. You know, they always stand out. They're always significant. Beat by Katie Taylor hasn't had anything significant, and it's a shame. I'm wondering whether, you know, I possible for whether, you know, fluctuating between the weights could actually career, because if she then has a possibility of fighting, you know, someone like a Lauren Price, for example, could that be a possibility down the line? You've got obviously Caroline and Terry fighting on the same card. Could Chantel come back down again? Could she fight one of those? You know, in that side of the sport, you see how much there is fluctuations in weight divisions with fighters, and I think there's a possibility if you don't fluctuate your weight and you don't move around and you don't look for the best opportunities, I feel you're going to end up getting left behind. And I think they've already got a really tough task on their hands as it is to really sort of push that side of the sport out there and really make waves in it. And they have done with certain fighters, but there's certain talented fighters that are just not getting that level of exposure that they really need, and they're not getting that level of hype that they really need at the moment. And it's cards like this that really need to keep getting pushed out there, and fighters being matched with really significant fights. If it doesn't happen, it's going to be the same for the next 5 years, I think, and it'll be a real shame because there's some talented female fighters out there that deserve opportunity.
Final thought. Moses Itauma. How good is he? How much excitement? What is the British sentiment?
I watched Moses make Jermaine Franklin look pretty average, and I couldn't believe how he was able really fast for a heavyweight. He gives every heavyweight in this division a problem right now. And you know what I'm like, Lukie? I don't necessarily always like to jump on the hype bandwagon. Each fight that he has gets me one more foot on the bandwagon, because I thought Jermaine Franklin would take him a lot more than 5 rounds, but it was very evident from that first round of that fight that he couldn't handle the pace, he couldn't handle the speed, the accuracy of what Moses was bringing to the table. And his boxing IQ as well, his intelligence in the ring. You know, he knew exactly when to pick apart Jermaine in that fight. And it was really, really refreshing to see for a kid of 21. Yeah, I understand why people are saying he's the future of the heavyweight division. A lot of people in Britain right now see him as the natural heir to the throne. I don't think everybody in the US will agree, but the more and more he keeps beating guys like Jermaine Franklin, who'd not been stopped before and not been hurt in the way he'd been hurt last night, he's just continuing to build fans as a result of that. And I think he needs another name now that's been in there with big names like your Joshuas and your Whites of the time, and he needs to continue to do that. The one thing I will say again, Lukie, is don't rush the guy. Usyk doesn't really see Moses in the horizon. It's not going to happen. I don't believe Usyk will ever look in that direction, because he's coming towards the end of his career. There's a slight possibility you may see him fight Anthony Joshua, but then again, I think Joshua, as you've seen on social media, training with Usyk, I think he's training for a Fury fight. I think that's why these guys are together all the time now. I think Usyk's trying to show Anthony Joshua the way in which to beat Tyson Fury, and I think that fight will happen at some point down the line this year. So, you know, those big names like that are out of the question. So who does Moses fight next? You know, you've got Daniel Dubois versus Fabio Wardley in May. That's tied up. Ajit Kabayal, is he too risky right now? He's a name that I certainly think, you know, if Moses could beat him, well, then really I'd start jumping on that bandwagon. I'd start putting that second foot on the bandwagon. But that's kind of where I am at with Moses at the moment. I want to be absolutely 100% engrossed, but again, being objective as I am, I try to sort of stay reserved and say, do you know what? Let's just see him beat another guy first. Let me see him beat another top guy before I can honestly say he could be the ruler of this division.
I think Gassiev is the next guy.
Yeah, he was mentioned last night on the punditry for DAZN as one of the picks for one of the pundits. It was either Darren Barker or it was either Fabio Wardley that said Gassiev. Gassiev would be a good name. The likes of Gassiev, the likes of Kabayal, they're names that I think if he was able to beat, then I certainly think, you know, we could start seriously considering him as the next big guy of the division. The WBO have now instated him as the mandatory challenger, Moses Itauma, which would then mean that he would technically then fight the winner of Fabio Wardley versus Daniel Dubois. So maybe that is the fight on the horizon later down the line this year.
Fun stuff. Where can people go to support you, and what do you got going?
As always, BTR Boxing Podcast Network, all across social media. We have obviously our other niche shows, Darker Side of Boxing, Legendary Nights, Career Profiles. You can go on there, you can listen to some of the historical content. I had a guy message me who listened to the Marvin Hagler Career Profile, and it was 7 years old this year, and he's like, I've just listened to it, I've only just found you. And that's the beauty of some of the content that we do. It's just there, and it's always relevant to people to listen to. So you can go and find us anywhere there. Social media, we're there. I'm just posting historical stuff all the time. I really enjoy that. People seem to enjoy picking up on it. So thank you as always for those that do come over from your podcast and listen to me, and for those that check out on the socials. I really appreciate it.